half boy, half god, all hero. You're listening to Ranking Rick Riordan, a podcast about Percy Jackson and the whole wide rest of the Riordanverse. I'm Dan.
I'm Olga.
And I'm Clara, and today we're reviewing Percy Jackson and the Chalice of the Gods.
Ranking Rick Riordan is available on youtube.com/doingok and podcast services around the world. Now let's get into some housekeeping.
So, we're back. It's been a while. Lots has changed in our lives. Mostly me and Olga got married, but also...
Which in practice is not that different.
So first of all, we were running a little behind on things because we were prepping for the wedding and planning and going crazy. That is past now. We are married. It is fantastic. But unfortunately, also during that time, I got a detached retina twice. And so I had to be under eye surgeries twice and did a lot of recovering and couldn't see much for quite a while. Still having some problems there, which is why this is audio only for right now. We will see for future episodes. But yeah, things have been a bit zany over here. But I'm hoping to get us back on track.
Also, Clara got a dog.
I did. I also got a haircut.
Oh.
I have some pretty cool things. No, I mean, dog is more important. I apologize if he barks. Hopefully we can edit it in post.
Well,
I understand. Everybody who's ever been on a Zoom call understands dogs barking.
Yeah.
We are going to do spoiler free at the top, where we do our general thoughts here. Then we'll be very clear that we're getting into the recap. And then when we get in the recap, it's obviously spoiler filled because we're recapping it. So anything else we want to say before we just dive into Chalice?
Dive in.
All right. Much like Percy does at the pool team. By that I mean
the
swim
pool
team.
team.
Pool
Wow,
team. Wow.
Dan.
You can tell we're sports people.
I did do swim team. I'm offended.
All right, sincerely offended party here. What do you think of Chalice of the Gods?
I really liked it. I was not necessarily stoked on having a series that took place before Trials of Apollo, but at the same, I was less excited about the time period of the trilogy and more excited about yay, we get a Percy story. And it's it felt like coming home. It just felt like being wrapped in this warm blanket of familiar prose. I mean, obviously we've been reading a lot of Rick's writing even since we read Olympians, Percy Jackson, the Olympians. But there's just something so comforting and distinctive about how he writes Percy's point of view.
Yeah. I think it's where he's at home the most.
Yeah.
Clara?
I really liked it too. I think it was a really nice, sweet, sort of standalone-y thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think for a lot of it, I was sort of it really feels like the original Percy Jackson books.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel, even though it's about him trying to get into college, it feels much more like, yeah, a kid could read this.
Yeah.
It's not getting into deep trauma and really emotional high stakes stuff. But then at the end, I think it also really sort of elevates that kind of, I don't want to say basic story. I think I mean foundational story.
Yeah.
It takes that to another level, which I was really glad to see.
Yeah. I was probably the most outspokenly anti the idea behind this book, and I am happy to say that I was wrong. I really ended up enjoying it, and I enjoyed it the more I went on. I think halfway through, I was yeah, this is pretty good. And I really liked the last third. And that really elevated it for me too, and it not only elevated it, it made it so the stuff from earlier was better now because it was thematically tied in, which obviously I can explain maybe better.
I think you should dive into that later.
Yes. But what I was worried about and what I was saying going into this book is I hope it's not just a short story where so many of the short stories are just this thing happens and it's 95% plot with a little tiny bit of character stuff. I wanted to feel like there was a reason I was reading this other than just like a Saturday morning cartoon. And I feel like he did a very good job of reminding you why you love Percy Jackson, but also putting you in where he is right now and making you feel those feelings, and also having a greater, more universal message about aging and growing up. So it did exactly what I wanted it to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just also add that I think this is the first time I really liked Grover 100% of the time. I'm sure there are there are other times when I've liked Grover, of course, but this one I was like, I don't resent that he's one of the main characters in this. Sorry, Grover.
There was a lot of food-based humor.
Yeah.
Like,
but I liked that in this one. That to me, it was comfort food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
It was a throwback, and I definitely prefer this food humor over the Meg food humor.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm just saying it was like, I think Grover could have something other than food humor, and he did. It just kept, again, just slight little too much by the end, going back to that well. But
I like the hula hooping.
I love the hula hoop. Again, we're not going to get into too many details.
I don't think that's a spoiler to say I like the hula hoop.
All right. Yeah, I really felt like, all things considered, if you as a reader only read like Percy Jackson point of view books, I mean, hopefully with the addition of Heroes of Olympus, like thrown in as like to show him aging, but like I feel like if you didn't read Trials of Apollo, this would be a really nice flow of like Percy growing up.
Yeah.
And it would all like feed into each other, and the stakes are big, but not, again, earth-shattering in this book. And it's just a really nice character development for all three of them, and like, some side characters as well. And there's something about that being like, again, growing with the reader too. Because again, if you have been reading these books throughout your like middle gradehood, I don't know, like elementary school into middle school, and then maybe you're still reading them into high school, you're going to get something out of this too. And I think, again, it's like you can go back to Rick's writing Percy at every phase of your life and find something new to relate to remember. For us, nostalgia a bit, maybe, about the high school, college application era.
Yeah.
Nostalgia for the application? No. Sympathy? Empathy?
Horror?
Maybe.
It was a specific
trauma.
It was a very specific phase of our lives. I'm not saying I ever want to return to it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that was another thing I was worried about going into this book, because I was like, yes, okay, I can relate to the admission process. Do I want to read about the admission process? But from Percy's lens, it's all good.
Yeah.
I do want to also...
He's so chill.
Yeah.
Is he, though? He doesn't seem...
Well, no, like he's so chill about something that's so stressful. Like it's part of his like persona. Like I'm on a roll. Watch out. Like he can take this really stressful thing, and he's stressed about it. He's anxious, but he knows he has a strong support system. And that's like, I think that's really remarkable. I won't get too much into it, but like he's so well adjusted.
Man, I have so many things I want to say. I want to say that I think that this book is like, when people hate on filler episodes, this is like the good filler, where it's like, you don't need this. It's not like really, like, you don't get a whole new understanding of anything really, but you get all these small moments that are meaningful, and thematically the book even like says that at the end. And we could talk more about that, but like I think that the moments of him with his family, with Annabeth, with Grover, they all just add the flavor that you don't always get the time to take in a bigger, more bombastic story. And I thought that was great. I also want to throw out, if in case anybody listening doesn't know, that there are in theory, I don't know if they officially said it, I have to look it up, that there are supposed to be 2 more books. So this thing is going to be a trilogy. And at some point, maybe not this podcast, I want to talk about like who's left. Who do we think he's going to meet in future installments? You know, what's left in the Greek pantheon for him to deal with?
There were plenty of new characters in this, or like people who were just mentioned on the sidelines, or frankly, even returning to certain wells in a different way. Like, you know, I'm just saying that it doesn't have to be something new to still feel pretty refreshing.
Yeah.
I mentioned the trio. We called out Grover specifically, but like Annabeth, I love her. She's so great and continues to be. Everyone fangirls for Annabeth, but like the fact that, again, their relationship being like, I think it was you, Clara, who said like the security and the support system, like she's part of that. She's an important part of that. Yeah. And maybe this is my like newlywed brain talking, but like, oh, they're such a destined couple. Like, oh, they're so cute and secure. And again, it's this thing of like normal 18-year-olds or 17-year-old, whatever. Your relationships might not make it to college.
But some do.
And it's really sweet. And like...
And the twist is that we don't know. In 5 years, he's going to write about how they break up in sophomore year.
No.
And then Percy dies all of a sudden before there's any resolution. No.
I wonder what we're referring to. I'm just saying that, like, I find... the new, even though we keep going back to Percy and Annabeth, they're so cute together. It's still like another level of, and here's how their relationship is a source of comfort and stability.
Yeah.
And
the same way I feel like he writes Percy so well because I feel like it's kind of him. I feel like he writes Percy and Annabeth so well because it's him and Becky.
Yeah.
But like that is what makes it feel real, even though like, you know, it's out there and not every couple is going to be like that. But
yeah.
Do we have any critiques that are spoiler free that we want to hit on before we recap?
I don't think so. I really can't think of any like overarching criticism I had of this book, honestly. I mean, I will say that in the first third, Dan, I think you were having this as well. Like the first third, I was sort of like, this is nice, you know. But then as I went on, it just continued to like, it's like a snowball. Like it just kept on picking up more and more and more things, and in a really nice way. So no, I don't have any overarching critique.
No, I think I wouldn't even necessarily call this a critique because I like the length of the book. It wasn't too long. It was longer than a short story, but, you know, a lot shorter than his other books. That almost said epics. It's not an epic. That's the thing. Like this is a pretty contained story. And I think that we basically have like 5 major set pieces.
Yeah.
And what?
Something about that, yeah.
Yeah, like right. I would say like 5 distinct parts to it with like a little bit of transition between them. But the fact that it's really just that amount, my only concern is like, is that going to be the formula for the other 2 books? Like that's just kind of my one maybe concern.
I think my concern that's sort of aside of what you're saying is I really like the themes and the ideas in this book and the ideas of like going off to college and growing up and all that stuff. I don't necessarily want the next 2 to also have the same themes, but they're kind of about the same thing. So I am interested in how he kind of maybe evolves that, maybe he focuses more on somebody else's, feelings. Like maybe it's a little more Annabeth focused for the character stuff next time. I don't know. But just I am interested to see how he would keep it fresh while still in this very specific zone of getting these recommendations.
Yeah.
So for me, as far as critiques go, I don't think there's anything that there's a few little small things that I have issues with. An interesting thing happened was there was one part that I was like, kind of wish, who's the Aru Shah writer?
Roshani Chakshi?
Yeah, I was like, I kind of wish she wrote this part because there were a few parts where I'm like, this could be better than it is. It's not bad, but I think it could be better than it is. And we'll get there when we do the recap.
Okay.
I'm very interested to hear what that is.
Yes.
I do think, no, you know what? I'll save it.
So anyone who doesn't want spoilers, I guess this is your time to stop listening, go read Chalice of the Gods, come back, hear our thoughts.
And get ready for a interesting recap because I did it completely from memory. The wiki is not updated, so I did it from memory, and I did my best, and I left a lot of things out probably. So
we'll cover it. No worries, Dan. We got you. All right, so diving in. Haha. We say that a lot, I know. Percy Jackson is trying to get into New Rome University, but first he has to get through his senior year.
Ooh.
Okay. His guidance counselor, I never know how to say this, Nereid, named Eudora, gives him the unfortunate news that he'll need 3 godly recommendation letters earned via 3 new quests to apply to NRU. Why can't he just get Rex based on his old quests? Because Zeus is a butthead. Specifically here, he's a butthead because this is him punishing Percy for being a child of the big 3. You know, something he has no control over.
All right, let's pause there. So, yeah, I really did enjoy the tying it back to the big 3 thing and Zeus being a butthead. You can kind of wave anything away, I guess, by being like, well, Zeus did it and he's terrible. So
it's a major theme.
Yeah, like in the Greek pantheon and original mythology too. It's like, oh, why did this crazy thing happen? Oh, because Zeus sucks.
Yeah. But I mean, this book really doesn't let Zeus off of the hook for sucking.
Mm-hmm.
Like
it never does.
It really doesn't.
Yeah, it just, but like in new ways, I would say, like, and it's kind of funny not to get too much into it, but like, you know, right now a lot of promo is already ramping up for the Percy Jackson, the Olympians show for the Lightning Thief, like season 1 story, and it's like Lance Reddick playing Zeus, and he's this like serious gravitas actor who's going to be bringing a lot to this season. And in the background, I'm like, I can't imagine him doing this kind of like this Zeus in season 1 / like Lightning Thief Zeus being like the same person. But I'm okay with that because Zeus deserves to be poked fun at.
Yeah.
He's terrible.
I am interested to see, like, does he just, obviously R.I.P.
Yeah.
Lance Reddick, love him so much. So sad to see that he's gone. But does he do the sort of general Lance Reddick thing that he does so well, or does he add in a little bit of something different, a little bit more comedy maybe? I think that would probably have appealed to him. Yeah. So interested to see where that goes. But yeah, we also, in this part of the book, we get the first sort of adult joke with the FU University.
Yeah. Yeah, there were some things that I was like, Rickerton, how could you? This is middle grade.
It's the perfect kind of joke where it's like it can just go over people's head.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, a 12-year-old knows.
Well, if they already know it, then he didn't do anything wrong.
All right, so Pop-Up Poseidon posted Percy's Quests Wanted ad. Oh my god. And he's quickly approached by Ganymede, cupbearer of the gods. The poor hunk has no cup to bear. So Percy needs to find the stolen chalice before Zeus finds out it's missing. All right, the Poseidon sequence. Let's talk about this, because daddy issues.
I mean, Poseidon gets so great by the end of the book, but what do you want to say about this beginning part?
It was really, like, frustrating. I felt frustrated for Percy in a way that I feel like is really relatable to a teenager, especially one who, let's say, like, is a child of divorce or, like, is raised predominantly not with, like, one of their parental figures. It's like, you're so close to getting it, but you don't get your kid enough to, like, get all the way there. And the way it's laid out here is really funny, too. So it's not that it undercuts it, it just like makes it more palatable.
I mean, I guess I haven't read the other books in a while, but it felt a little bit like not out of left field. Like we've seen, obviously, Poseidon has not been super present in Percy's life. But I guess I've been sort of like living back in like, I don't know, Lightning Thief era a little bit and thinking about him as sort of like, I would have loved to be in your life, Percy, but like I just couldn't because again, Zeus sucks. Like, and so to go from that to this, where he's sort of much more like distant by choice, felt a little jarring to me, but like it made sense and it worked. And then like by the end, he was sort of more like, oh yeah, this is sort of how I remember him being. But
I'm wondering,
it sort of caught me off guard.
So much of this, I go, okay, is this influenced by writing the show?
Yeah.
Even like the way he's writing Annabeth and Percy or Grover or whatever, like any of this stuff. I'm like, because the book it's dedicated to the actors. And so it's just like, I don't know. It's interesting. I see where you're coming from with Poseidon for sure. And I'll say, I think it's funny that like Percy's known for like, quote unquote, like being rude or like, like upsetting the gods by saying things he shouldn't say. But he actually has like a lot of restraint when talking, especially to Poseidon, where he never like actually gets angry. He's just like, really?
I think that, and again, maybe this is the like relatable side of it, of like you get that he gives Poseidon grace in a way that you only really extend to someone that you actually care about. And I feel like I hear more of Percy's bitterness to the other gods in a way that whereas he has just this like kind of like sort of quiet resignation or like just a little bit of angst. It's just different degrees. Like he blames the gods in general for like how they treat their kids in a way that he doesn't specifically blame Poseidon. That's just kind of a thread that I felt. But in regards to like him and Lightning Thief, it's like in Lightning Thief, he's still relatively young. Like he's still just like getting the first taste of having his father in his life. And by now it's like, all right, like our relationship should be different from how it was when I was 12. And it really hasn't changed that much. And it's like he's waiting for Poseidon to step up and is like constantly disappointed.
Waiting or is he waiting?
Oh my God. No, he's been flushed. Nice whatever that is.
He's been flushed.
That's weird, Olga. That's a weird thing to say.
Do we want to talk about the himbos?
Oh, Ganymede.
I mean, that whole sequence with the smoothies and everything.
Again, is himbo a child appropriate word?
Apparently,
I would not.
There's stores named it, so.
Okay. Clara, input?
I really like, are we saying Ganymede or Ganymede?
Ganymede is how they say it in the audio.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go with Ganymede.
Yep.
So I feel like one of my concerns about this whole plot was when we learned that Ganymede was going to be the person. I was like, oh, that story is really disturbing.
Yeah.
Like, I hope it's not just sort of like brushed to the side or something. And I shouldn't have worried because it's Rick. And I shouldn't have worried because this book did it really well.
Yeah.
But in this first scene, I was like, uh-oh. and then as soon as Ganymede like winces or whatever, when the eagle smoothie, whatever thing happens, I was like, oh, I see, Rick. Oh, you got this all under control, Rick. I trust you completely.
And I really like how they use Ganymede to give more of a stakes to this whole book. Because like Poseidon says near the end, where it's like, it's not really about the recommendation letter by the end. It's not about like succeeding in the quest. It's about he actually cares about this person and doesn't want them to get punished more than they already are. And that's what makes Percy such a hero, is because he barely even knows this guy.
Yeah.
And
it's a book about agency as well as growing up. Like that's a lot of what I think is a through line of the demigods' lives and varying degrees of like importance of theme to the books, but it's like Percy has not been an active decision maker in a lot of the big parts of his life. They've been out of his control, so it's important to him to like exert to like follow people's choices as much as he is able, because he knows that being like a demigod involved in the Olympians, involved in all of this like type of universe means not having agency. So I appreciated that. I think this was handled in as age appropriate terms as it could have been. And is the story more brutal, like in reality, in the like original? I don't want to say text because it wasn't written, but you know, the lore, the folklore, the religion, like it was very.
I think they get the point across.
Yeah, they get it across.
Yeah. It's very Trials of Apollo-y. Like, this is handling a really, really sensitive thing. And maybe even more than Trials of Apollo, it's taking it to a level that even a much younger child, I think, can see, like, this is bad, this is tragic, this is horrible, this is scary, without it being something that the trauma needs to be like really, really explored in the way that it is in Trials of Apollo.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the ways you know off the bat that Rick is handling this the right way is that the whole book is centered around this character. Whereas, like, I think where things could have gone wrong is if he was in a previous book and he was one of 12 sequences and he got like a page and a half to talk about his history or whatever. Like, a story like this needs to have a little bit more time to breathe. And so I think it was a really smart idea.
I also got the impression that, like, my feeling about Ganymede is that while there were, like, humorous situations for him, he wasn't the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
And I think that's also kind of, like, an important element to it. Like, things can be funny with him.
Yeah.
And again, like, his lack of understanding of, like, the mortal world and all of that. But it really is, like, Zeus is the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
Because that's how you depower him.
Yeah.
And you feel pity and sympathy for Ganymede and his situation. And you want Percy to help him. But he's still also a god, which leads to its own, you know, like, shenanigans.
I have a question I haven't thought that much about. So is it in any way potentially, maybe for some people, problematic that in this particular book, the only idea of queerness is this, like, very vile version of that? I mean, obviously, when you look at Rick's work, including the very last book, that I don't have that issue at all. But I do just wonder if in a vacuum, I don't know. I don't think so, but I just figured I'd throw it out there.
It is interesting. I mean, it's much less concerning than if it were like this was his first foray into writing about queer people.
Yeah.
But it is true that the fact that there are no other queer relationships depicted in the book.
It's just, I think it's just something to mention. I don't think it's like a huge issue.
But it's not even, I mean, honestly, I think it's a false equivalency to even call this a relationship. It is, it's not a relationship. It is about like,
well, I don't think I said relationship. I'm saying a depiction of queerness. So it's like, I'm talking specifically about
I think
Zeus.
the word relationship got thrown.
I threw it in to say that there weren't any depictions of like
positive
good ones.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, or I think other depictions of queerness too could have helped, just like some sort of something. But
yeah,
I mean, there weren't that many. This was a pretty short book.
Yeah,
it's not as though it looked as though the entire world was straight and then like Zeus was as usual bad.
Yeah.
And also happens to be queer.
Yeah.
Or whatever he is. Yeah. I
love Zeus. Yeah, queer is probably not the right word for him, right? Yeah. Since it has other connotations.
I have like so many so much adult language I want to use. I think that this is where it being, again, like a shorter book, a more narrow focus book, but like where it's like more important to see the greater amount of like Percy Jackson series in order to let it be part of the big picture.
Well, and especially this book, like it's standalone, but it's not. Like you're not going to read this one without having read the other ones, at least the other Percy ones.
Yeah.
So
that would be really weird.
Yeah.
I don't know who would do that unless it's like a parent who wants to read whatever their kid is like currently reading and their kid read the other ones.
I can see, I mean, kids find books in all sorts of weird ways where they just pick one off a shelf and they don't know it's part of a series or whatever, but you know.
True.
I'm just saying I don't think anybody intentionally reads this one out of order.
I was like never that kid, so I can't relate. I was completionist child.
All right, back to the recap.
Yeah, so you have a point here about the Jackson Blowfuses.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna circle back to that.
Okay.
All right, Percy is joined by his besties, Annabeth and Grover, and they track down Hebe, the goddess of youth, at her establishment, Hebe Jeebies, which is like
classic.
A Chuck E. Cheese meets other arcade.
Chuck E. Cheese on Coke.
Coca-Cola meets a chicken coop. So Hebe hates Ganymede. So they try to question her about whether she stole the chalice. She gets angry and turns them all into little kids again. They're 8 years old and their little tiny hands are scaring them. They complain about being children, or little children, and, well, that's not acceptable. So the chickens are sicked on them, the bloodthirsty creatures. Annabeth tricks Hebe into turning into a baby by hiding a baby chick in the room, and Hebe has to be the youngest one in the room. So they make a deal, and she turns them back into teenagers again, giving them information about where to look for the chalice next.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the set piece here. I had a really good time with the boomer jokes. Sorry. I enjoyed some of the poking fun at millennials too, about like nostalgia and stuff like that. It was all good stuff. I didn't love the chicken stuff. I found it a little bit hard to follow, but I loved Annabeth's plan ultimately. And like, yeah, overall, I thought this was fun. This is just like in the part of the book where I was like, yeah, okay, chickens, sure, why not, whatever.
Yeah, this is definitely the part that feels the most classic, I would say. Feels like Lotus Hotel mixed with Medusa, like all those little things. Some Sea of Monsters thrown in there.
Oh, it felt very Sea of Monsters to me. Yeah.
But I like it overall. I like them being turned to little kids. I think that's really it's just a very fun sequence. This is the sequence that I felt that I wished Roshani Chokshi wrote. I felt it was a missed opportunity. I feel like so later in the book we hear a lot about old age, and Rick has a lot to say about old age because he's old. And he does a very good job of that. I don't think he does as good a job talking about nostalgia, which old people obviously definitely have too. But I think there is something very specific about millennials and nostalgia that I don't think he fully hit on. I also feel like the lack of references to like actual specific things hurt this sequence. I also think that it didn't really have anything powerful to say about nostalgia. And I think that if it was handled by someone like Roshani Chokshi, I would walk away and go, she had something to say there, not just this was a fun sequence.
Yeah, for me, I think it was a little imbalanced and it felt a little too action-y / it went on a little too long. Run it like first we go through and we need a description of Heebie-Jeebies, and then we need a long conversation with Hebe. Then we get turned into children. Then we run from chickens. Then we talk to Hebe again. It was a little too many parts within it. And so while it was fun, I do think that the point he was trying to make, which was about like the powerlessness of youth, was a little lost in the fray. And I do think that his point about like the powerlessness is what he was trying to get to with Ganymede later, and like the subject of immortality, of like being trapped in youth. He's like, he was saying that he was trapped in youth, having to relive his like preteen years would be awful. And he's not strong, and he's not going to be as smart or fast or anything. Like, that really was his focus. And I feel like there could have, I agree, Dan, there could have been a little bit more oomph with that to tie it more into paralleling like why old age isn't a bad thing again. But it was just dipping our toes in the water. That's the thing with it being like the first sequence. I think it was just introducing the themes, bringing us back to.
Well, that's why I was talking earlier about how by the end of the book, when we are getting the old age stuff, it makes this sequence better to me, because it's not just there to be fun. It does have a thematic element that goes throughout the book and starts at youth and goes to old age. And I think that that's really cool.
I agree.
Something else I want to mention here is Percy doesn't use Riptide once in this book. I think that had to have been intentional.
I wonder why.
I think it's more fun to write other ways out of things.
Wow, that's such a good catch.
Yeah, because this is the only scene where he actually tries to.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because he definitely doesn't use it against Ellison, and he doesn't use it against Garrus. And he definitely doesn't use it in Olympus, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. No weapons against snakes.
Yep.
Iris's rules that she forgot about.
Cruelty free.
Yeah. I think this was like an appropriate placement for this sequence, because if it was anywhere else in this book, it would have been a step back.
Yeah. I think another thing is that a lot of older people, I feel like, overlook the fact that a lot of young people actually like old things. Like, it doesn't really ring true to me personally that all the teenagers are like, ick, everything boomers like are terrible, all of their music is awful, why would anybody ever play this game? And like, that was never who I was, and definitely wasn't who a lot of my friends were. And especially now that they're 17, like, it'd be one thing if they were like 11 or something, but
I don't know. I feel like 17 is the age when you actually do roll your eyes at old
17
stuff.
was the age where I had multiple bands from the 70s t-shirts.
I think that was you being a dweeb.
I had a lot of dweebs around me.
I'm not denying that. One of them does a podcast with you.
Yeah. No, I do think, I think your point about like a millennial would have written this scene differently.
Yeah.
I think a millennial also wouldn't have written the boomer stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, like I feel like Rick was able to write the stuff about like protest songs.
Yep.
You know, like I don't know that that's how I would have written it.
Yep.
And that was something that rang true. And then there was just like a sort of hint of millennial nostalgia. And of course, I as a millennial was like, more about me, please.
Yeah.
and I didn't get it.
Yep.
But I think it would have been really, really cool and interesting and a different telling of the story. And I do think, we understand our likes and dislikes of old things differently.
Mm.
You know, it's funny. You never really think about it, is that like Percy is no generation, because he's just always going to be whatever generation is currently reading his book.
He is immortal. He's forever. Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah.
Because originally he was a millennial.
He would be a millennial, but now he's whatever the
Alpha.
order between Alpha and Z is.
Yep.
Zalpha.
They need a different thing than Gen Alpha. But yeah, like, so Rick has to like I think maybe one of the other reasons he's been more careful about references is because some of them that he has included in the books have not aged well. R.I.P. Vine. I forget which one that was in, but like, nope, that one.
I think that might have been a Heroes of Olympus thing.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things where maybe he's more Like, all right, I want this to like have cultural touchstones, but not necessarily be like dated and quite the same way as. I don't think he thought he'd still be writing Percy POV in 2023.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he saw this coming for himself. All right, next stop, farmer's market. Going to question Iris, goddess of the rainbow. They bring along her daughter Naomi to help. She's a goth photographer, and Grover thinks she's such an artist. She and Aiden should hang out sometime.
Aiden from Arusha.
I was like, who is Aiden?
The other goth photographer.
It's like, yeah, he's not goth.
He's not goth.
He's goth adjacent. He only wears black.
I mean, that's just being an artist.
Yeah.
Anyway, Grover does a photo shoot with Naomi and his girlfriend Juniper gets jealous. This is all later, but makes sense to talk about now. Percy does give Grover relationship advice and it fixes everything because the one thing Percy is smart about apparently is like love and intuition and caring for people.
Mm-hmm.
So unlike a 17-year-old boy, it's almost like this whole part could have been cut. Daniel.
This is definitely the low point for me. But
and here I'm sitting like, aw, romance, love, relationships, newlyweds. This is wonderful. Dan's like, this is unnecessary. Cut it.
I mean, I like Percy and Annabeth. I just don't care about this weird side thing with Juniper, who's never really been a character and isn't even in this to be a character.
Yeah.
I like that they talk about it at the swim meet, though. That was cool.
That's what I thought you were criticizing.
No.
That's the part that I'm saying was good.
I'm saying the whole Naomi didn't need to be in this at all.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Naomi did not need to be in this. You are very right there.
Yeah. I was sitting there like, am I supposed to know this character?
Yeah.
Have we met?
Me too. She was big Trials of Apollo, like, and we need to add another person.
Yeah.
I almost called her an NPC, but like kind of. We need to add this other demigod, otherwise it won't be a new book.
Yeah.
And like,
I also feel like it felt like one of those things that is like the kidification story where it's like Grover can't actually have relationship drama. He can't actually be torn and kind of like someone else because that wouldn't be kosher. So instead, he's just a dum-dum.
Yeah. This is the part where Grover worked the least for me.
I didn't think it was terrible,
No.
but it was just the most like not necessary.
I just want to say, like, okay, to be a little bit more generous to this sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take it back to Iris.
Mm-hmm.
So she desperately like wants to understand her daughter and like have common ground with her child.
That
her
is
child who dresses in all black and doesn't want to be rainbowy and hippie. Like the only way she is the hipster to Iris's hippie. And
nice.
Thank you. See, two can play at this game, Clara. Like Iris being so like, oh, here, I made this sweater for you. And she's like, and Naomi being like, yeah, pink ducks or whatever, pink unicorns. Totally my aesthetic as like an edgy photographer. And like Iris feels bad, but like at the same time, she doesn't push herself onto Naomi either too much. She's putting the ball in Iris's court of like, all right, you reach out to me when you're ready. And she's so excited to hang out with her daughter, or the promise of seeing her daughter in the future. Like, again, you can still read it as she's a removed parent who doesn't get their kid because she wasn't as involved in her life.
Mm.
But the way she tries, it parallels nicely with like, how Poseidon tries and also fails, and how I don't know. I just think it's another factor of like teen, adult, not getting it. The teen also going out into the world. Like Naomi's also like she's successful. She has a gallery. She's like she doesn't need her mom really.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of funny part about that age. It's like you're still at home. You're getting ready for the principle of leaving it, and you don't actually know what it's gonna feel like, but you want it, but you also feel a little guilty for wanting it. And if you don't end up leaving, you know there's still positives to that, but your friends might have left too, so you still might feel jealous or like want them around you. It's just like such a transitionary state
You
of
made
life.
this a lot more deep than I think it was, but I'm glad you got it.
I just am connecting this to like,
Yeah.
again, I skipped over the like us talking about Sally and
Mhm.
everything but that's the fact. Like this book is about growing up and not being afraid to grow up, but at the same time, it is scary.
Yeah.
And your relationships with your parents change.
Yeah. Do you want to just quickly mention the Sally stuff?
Okay, so Sally and Paul reveal that Sally is pregnant.
And it's very interesting to be in Percy's head when he finds that out. I mean, we as readers already know this.
We meet baby Estelle in Trials of Apollo.
Savior of the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think he even is a savior of the world in Magnus Chase too, right? Isn't that part of it?
In some way, yes. And now she's also like some sort of savior in this book.
I really did
Estelle.
enjoy both how Percy pondered about, the idea of leaving and not wanting to leave, but also feeling like it's okay to leave now. And I enjoyed that Annabeth didn't know how he would react, and how for her, the step-sibling thing was such a traumatic thing. Just anytime they bring up stuff like that, I think it's great use of continuity.
Yeah.
I loved this. I really, really, really loved this. This was one of the moments, I think it's the night after he finds out and he's like trying to fall asleep and he's thinking like, you know what, actually, like this is kind of great because even if I don't end up getting into New Rome, I'll be able to be here and watch my little sister like grow up a little bit. And that is that thing of like Percy can have less anxiety than I might have had because he's well adjusted in a way that I wish I was. But so much of that adjustment comes from him being so self-aware about his relationships. Like he really knows he has people he can trust. And that is so, so wonderful to see. And also, this is the point, I almost said it when we were still in our spoiler-free thing, but this is, I think, where the other two books have a place to go. Is like more of his relationship with Sally and leaving home and what that's going to feel like for him, and talking more with her, talking more with Poseidon. I think Olga, you're right on that. So much of this is about how he relates to his parents as he's growing up and about to leave home. And I think there's a lot more that can be said about that in the next two books.
Yeah. There's ties to, like, again, nostalgia for Lightning Thief with, like, when Sally was still with
Gabe.
With Gabe and working at the candy shop and getting him the blue foods and smelling like it brings... They're leaning into, like, here's how Sally has grown as well.
She's writing, publishing a book for the first time.
Yeah. And here's her in a, like, stable, supporting relationship with Paul. And look at how wonderful he is. And he and Percy have a rapport. But he's not Percy's dad, and he doesn't try to be. But, like, it's just, like, a very real and nice demonstration of, like, an alternative family structure, or like a non-nuclear family is the thing. Because, I mean, that's the reality is for a lot of kids, by the time that they're in their teen years, their parents might be on a second marriage or with someone who isn't their, like, biological parent. And that and what a family looks like can look really different for a lot of people, but it can still be stable and happy and have its, like, awkward fitting moments and moments of tension, but still be good. Like, Annabeth's experience with a step parent and step siblings, not great, but that didn't have to be Percy's.
Yeah. Well, and I love that they repeatedly come back to the family dinners, and it's really, really nice to break things up with those moments, and those characters gel so well together, and that's not something you necessarily have time for in the world is ending kind of books. And so I think that is definitely a high point here. Something I want to say also about upcoming books that I would like is maybe Percy starting to want to go to college for himself and not just for Annabeth. I think that obviously it's great how much he loves Annabeth and that he wants to be with her no matter what. But I think I would, he is at the age where you start thinking about like, what is my life going to be? And that has to be not just in the lens of, well, I'm going to be her himbo. It's so like, I would like to like, and we know obviously from like Sun and Stars and stuff, like he doesn't have a major yet and all that stuff. And that's fine. But I would like to see him want to do this for himself too.
Yeah, I agree. I also want to see, my big dream for one of those next 2 books is he and Annabeth get into a real fight.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that would be really, really good and important
Yep.
to have written out. And I could really see it happening as part of that. Like, there needs to be a book here that's about his and Annabeth's relationship.
Yep.
And he has to, think about himself a little bit more.
Yeah.
That would be very cool.
I agree. I
That
think
would
that's
be awesome.
That would definitely, I mean, he's the titular character here, and he centers so much of his identity around other people.
I think them having a fight thing is really important because that's the thing that makes them feel the least real, right?
Mhm.
It's like it's
Yeah.
not like crazy to be like they're so in love and they're meant to be together. It's just that it's like they can't be perfect. Even the people that are so in love and meant to be together are gonna have conflicts because that's just life. And so like yes, that she makes fun of him and stuff, but like we need an actual conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if it could be something. I would love if she was making fun of him at one point and he was just sort of like, you know what, like that actually sometimes affects me.
Yeah.
Or like, like it could be something like kind of just introducing something a little more complicated into their feelings for each other and then resolving it and moving beyond it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe even introducing possible doubt of Annabeth actually like maybe going to New Rome and maybe something comes up about her going somewhere else or like having an internship somewhere else. So she's not available and around to like perfectly support him through this. Then he has to be more like
On top of it himself.
Yeah. / like putting it into context of like, well, what if we drift apart while we're in college instead of it bringing just because we're both there together? What if she has other people around her in a way that's like threatening to me? Like, I mean,
I forget where she is in Hidden Oracle.
Yeah.
Because she's doing something like that, I think.
That's what
she's away for like the weekend at least.
Hidden or I
might be
try not
Magnus
to think
Chase
It's
about
not a Magnus Chase.
Yeah.
I think it's the tie-in to Magnus Chase.
That might be
but
it.
I can't really remember.
Yeah.
At the same time, we do have Percy specifically calling out of like, we went through Tartarus together. Nothing's going to split us up. But like, I don't know, maybe some insecurity.
Yeah. Well, that's like.
But like, and what about when it's not? What about when you're not in Tartarus facing a common enemy? What if like you actually have to have conflict yourselves?
Yeah.
I think that's really important to be shown in this sort of like very model relationship for young
I
people.
don't need it to be like, oh my God, are they going to break up?
Yeah.
I just need it to be like, okay, how are they going to work through this together?
Yeah. Honestly, like Sun and Star.
Yeah.
Like that showed relationship conflict in such a great way. And I don't think it needs to be to that extent either, but like there needs to be some level of them not being on exactly the same page.
Yep. So Iris, she has some ideas about who might have stolen the chalice, but while she looks into that, she's going to send Percy and company on a side quest. They need to clean her old messenger staff thing in some really clean water, and of course it's going to be dangerous. Cut to Yonkers and the hidden River Ellison. Grover distracts a bunch of horned serpents so Percy can clean the stick, but the god of the river, Ellison, who's a yoga grump guy, I don't know, this isn't an archetype I'm familiar with, he's stuck up, is sick of everyone dirtying his pure, clean waters. Ellison attacks Percy, but our boy PJ does an anger jumbo explosion thing and violently cleans the river real good, traumatizing Ellison and necessitating some therapy courtesy of Annabeth. Percy uses the messenger stick to fly past the snakes and rejoin Grover and Annabeth outside of the underground.
That was a cool part with the staff because I was like, how is he going to get out of this one? And it was actually like a fun way. I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, this was like not necessarily super tied into the overall story, like narrative, aside from, again, being about agency. I think like Percy's anger at having to do this, and like how Ellison is like talking to him and putting him through this. Like Percy gets angry at this scenario again in a way of like feeling out of control. And then it's funny.
Yeah.
And then it's, you have like this typical actiony stuff where he also becomes like god of the snakes, using the rainbows to hypnotize them.
I also think that this part of the function of this part is to show the anger explosion so that then they can't redo that at the end with Gary. Because they do, like, when he's facing off the Gary, he's like, I tried to do it again, but it's not going to work this time. So I think that's part of it, too.
Fair.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Iris then tells Percy that some scary dude named Gary has the cup. Scary Gary. Percy tries to research him, but to no avail.
Good job trying, even though you're not very good at it.
Who could Gary be? That's not a Greek name.
Did either of you figure out who this was?
Clara.
I didn't, but I didn't try.
Yeah.
Like, this was the part of the book where I was like, oh, I'm really in it now. And I was just sort of like breezing. I think I actually, probably around Ellison, I think I just read straight through. So I didn't stop and do some research of my own in my brain.
I didn't know who it was either, and I was delightfully surprised to not immediately know something like that. Like when we've had like Madam M and all the other previous things where it's been really in your face and obvious. This one was fun.
Yeah. This was. I was not like specifically trying to think of what god it could be. I was just like, what kind of person would be looking for it? Like almost like more I hadn't put together the themes necessarily.
Well, that's because the Ellison stuff feels very different from the Hebe stuff. It didn't feel like we were in a thematic thing necessarily until we had the end to connect the beginning and the end together. That's why I think the Ellison thing is probably the weakest of the set pieces, even though there's some interesting stuff there. It just feels a little like they could have put this in another one of the books and popped it wherever they want. Like
maybe, but it was also pretty short.
Yeah.
Like it really was not a long sequence in comparison to like Hebe.
Yeah.
And again, like Iris is nice. So like you're not gonna have her be a stick in the mud in the same way. Like Rick did need to think of like, how do we remove her from this conversation? Because we also have met her and gotten a bunch of the hippie granola jokes with her in book 2.
Son of Neptune.
Son of Neptune. Thank you.
I guess there's probably
Clara is like, you guys.
There's probably thematic elements in the idea of like renewal and like the stick being old and forgotten, and like, I don't know, you could do something with that. But anyway.
I'm just really, Olga, I just like that you said stick in the mud, because that was kind of the point of this.
I think, did Dan not write that?
I don't remember.
Anyway, maybe I'll take the credit. Thanks.
Take it.
Yeah. You could have a thing of like Iris not wanting to go back to being the cupbearer because she has grown past that, and like feels sad for Ganymede as well. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to be subservient in that way. I'd rather be a messenger and be an old hippie lady. Grover gets intel that Gary hangs out at Washington Square Park, so the three amigos storm the park. Great. Dan, bang up job. Gary is Jairus or Garrus. I forget. Yes, that makes more sense considering Gary. Garrus, the god of old age. Old age isn't one to be trifled with. He's kind of gross looking, but he's a powerful one. Percy agrees to wrestle him for the chalice, but that doesn't work out so well. Percy thinks about getting old and looking forward to his future with Annabeth and Grover. He decides to literally embrace old age, and Garrus is stunned. Out of gratitude, he hands over the chalice.
I really, really, really like this section. And I know obviously it's on the nose that he literally embraces old age, but like it really worked for me.
Yeah. Like, same here. This I got through the Ellison bit and I was still sort of like, yep, this sure is just some like crazy hijinks happening. And then I got to this and I was like, oh Rick. Oh Rick, you still got it, Rick. Like this is gold.
Yeah.
This is so good. I teared up. I actually don't know whether one of these books has made me cry. That's such a lie. Power of Nero. But this one did too.
It makes so much sense that he's an inevitability. He's like so strong because he is not something avoidable. And again, just to discuss it, like the reason that he stole the chalice being that Ganymede was immortal, who was turned into a god, and therefore he was deprived of being old. And Garrus is upset that the gods have the ability to like make people immortal. So he wants to take away an item that can cause that. So perfect rationale, makes sense. Good job, Rick, with like who could be the bad guy who isn't actually a bad guy. And I really didn't expect this to be like how Percy, like embracing Gary being how Percy gets his way out of it. Like I knew he would use his wits and not brute force. But like I could not put together that just by being like, yeah, you're right, you are inevitable. And I did reject immortality once upon a time. And I still believe that. So I agree with you, but I'm not going to let you win and hurt this other person who is a innocent bystander of like your resentment.
Yeah. Maybe it's just because I haven't seen this particular idea done that much. Like, it seems obvious, but I haven't seen it. So, like, you know, and other things, it's like, I could, like, eye roll. It's like, oh, they won with the power of friendship or whatever. But this feels like it's in that zone, but it really works in a way that feels fresh because I think that old age is a thing that so many people, no matter how old they get, are constantly wrestling with. But, you know, like, I think it is not something that feels trite because I don't think people really ever, a lot of people never really get over it. A lot of people don't get to where Percy gets in this book. And so it doesn't feel hackneyed, even though it's adjacent to that, I think.
It could be cheesy, but it isn't.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is also that it's Percy. I think if any other character in the Riordanverse did this, I think we might roll our eyes and it wouldn't feel true because we know, like we see around us, like, yeah, everyone is fighting against getting older. And this is exactly what makes Percy so fantastic and like a standout even among other heroes. Like this is it. This is his real superpower and it's strong. It's believable enough for him. Rick has done so much work in crafting this character that he can actually pull off this stunt and make it really meaningful instead of trite.
Yeah. And I think also the writing of the actual fight and the amount of time that went on before the hug, I thought that it was a well done action sequence. So it didn't feel like, oh, you know, there wasn't a climax because he just hugged the guy. You know? Like we still got the action sequence.
I think this whole like Washington Square Park portion was just like impeccably written. Like it really had a lot of humor to like make the sentimental moment super unexpected as well. Like Gary is sarcastic. Percy is definitely sarcastic. Grover with the mochi donuts. Like it's all it all works to still feel like a Percy book. Like it feels like an appropriate voice. And again, also tying into like Annabeth, come up with a plan. I need you. And then it's still needing to come from his own lived experience.
Yeah, he doesn't overcome it with wit. He overcomes it with his heart. And that's what Annabeth wouldn't have been the one to do that.
He's such a good boy. He wants to live in a little cottage in his old age with Annabeth and Grover and take a nap by the ocean. It's so sweet. Now, Percy has to give Ganymede the cup back. Easy, right? Wrong. Butthead Zeus is throwing a surprise brunch for his mom, which, honestly, is a semi-nice thing to do, but it's Zeus, so butthead. Percy has to infiltrate Olympus and sneakily get Ganymede the chalice back without anyone finding out he lost it in the first place. After some wacky hijinks with goat hula hooping and a pastry cart, Percy gets a surprise assist from his mother-in-law-to-be, Athena, and hands the cup over to Ganymede. Everything about, like, Percy's journey through the Empire State Building up to Olympus and back was phenomenal.
Yeah, I stopped reading or listening right after the Gary stuff for like a day and a half or whatever, and I saw that I had like an hour and a half left, and I was like, how is this I was like, what are he's gonna do a second climax again, he's gonna
Classic
but I was
Rick.
like,
Yeah, that's what I said, Clara, word for word.
but this was so good. Loved every minute of it.
Yeah. This, honestly, like, this is how, like, okay, fine. If the climax is not at the end, that's fine. That's great. But this, please, like, imagine if, like, Ellison had been the really emotional climax, but then, like, Gary was the, like, I don't know, whatever. And then there was still that, like, this is it.
Yeah.
Rick, let there be an hour and a half left after the major emotional thing, but this is it. This was so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
And high stakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good use of Athena, good use of the lion. I don't know if like is the right word. I thought it was interesting and well done that Zeus was saying stuff like, I like watching him walk away and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, like I thought that added to that part of the story.
He's so gross.
He really cements himself. Every time I think, like, well, he can't be more the number one bad guy on our list. Like, he is. He's the worst.
Yep.
Anyway, he's the worst.
Just how Rick still innovates in writing new things from Percy's perspective. He also innovates new lows for Zeus in a middle grade novel. I really appreciated the fact that, like, where Gary was like the conclusion of the theme of like growing up for this book, this was the emphasis on like power and having control over your life. Like, I mean, these things aren't free from each other, but I felt like this was a nice way of like addressing Ganymede specifically and his character arc in relation to Percy.
Also, did Percy really never wear the Yankees cap before this book? I could have sworn he had, but
I think it might have been other people, or just we heard so much about it.
Yeah,
that was
I had the same reaction, but I believe Rick.
Did he give it maybe to one of the Kane people? There was a thing where they
maybe like Sadie
things.
has had it or something.
Yeah. I want to reread that short story because that also hits on Percy and immortality, so I feel like it fits pretty nicely in with this.
Yeah. All of the comedy here really worked, and Zeus being a blowhard is just
great.
Phenomenal. Yeah. Best word for it. So Percy is super late for class, but his dad calls into the office excusing him. Poseidon and him have an actual loving conversation where he calls Percy a true hero for his little waves. Later that night, do we want to talk about this here?
I mean, I kind of hit it earlier when I was like, I feel like it's being self-referential of the book and the little wave as far as like, yeah, this one doesn't matter as much, but it's still impactful and it still matters for who the people are. And him recognizing that Percy did this for this random stranger god, I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Later that night.
Oh, also him flirting with the secretary was a nice side thing where I'm like, he's still a god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really like, again, it's a really nice contrast of like, hey son, I'm helping you by taking this unflattering photo of you through a mirror and like I'm helping you, haha. And then it's like, no, you're actually helping him here, and not just through excusing his tardy, because again, the guidance counselor nymph could have done that. It was about like giving him that emotional connection and giving him that support that he hasn't always given him through absence and through world-ending stakes. So, later that night, Sally, Paul, Annabeth, and Percy work on his recommendation letter because Ganymede was too lazy to write it himself. They all poke fun at Percy, but it's very sweet and cute and yaw. Things wrap up with a cute iris message between Percy and Annabeth where he talks about them growing old together and they tell each other that they love each other. The end.
This was another thing where I was like, wait, have they told each other they love each other? They must have, right? I wasn't sure if this was supposed to be the first time or not.
I couldn't tell either because it felt very casual. Like it was really sweet and nice, but it wasn't like I was so nervous to say it to her. I think they've already said it to me. I'm embarrassed that I don't
I'm embarrassed that I don't remember.
I had the same exact question.
I just assume that they've said it thousands of times.
I think because we've heard it in their heads of like, I love Percy, I love Annabeth, that maybe Rick realized that he hadn't outright said it, or maybe not said it too much.
I mean, the fact
I think
that
we're supposed to read it as they've said it to each other. This is the first time it's on the page.
Maybe, but like the fact that it's called like the best kiss goodbye ever or whatever, I'm like, that makes it seem like it's not just another night, like that it is special. Someone's going to let us know whether they've said it in person before, but...
Speaking of which...
Yep.
Feedback. Please send us your thoughts and corrections, comments to our podcast feedback@gmail.com, or comment on the YouTube version of this podcast, or tweet at us at Ranking Riordan /X at us.
Oh,
It's not called Twitter anymore.
Ooh.
That's another change since we last
Zeus,
recorded.
What are you doing? Before we get into ranking, one last thing I want to say is in the Barnes & Noble edition of the book, in the back of the book are recommendation letters that maybe spoil the future books. I'm like, is this like official? Because it shows who the other letters are from.
Oh.
And one of them's from Apollo. Which doesn't make sense. And there's also 4 letters. So that also doesn't make sense. So we should talk about this at another time, I think. But because I haven't actually read them. I just saw that on the wiki when I was looking through. But interesting stuff for the future.
I read them.
Yep.
I read them. The Apollo one, I'll just say, ends in a really funny way where it's like, gotta go. Zeus wants to talk to me now. I'm sure it can't be anything important.
Yeah, but that's the thing that makes it not make sense.
Right, right. No, so I got nothing on like whether this is I bet it's not official. I don't know.
All right. No spoilers.
All right. Shall I be frank?
Yeah, Dan, it's been a minute since you've serenaded us. Karaoke time.
Let's be frank, it's time to rank. This one's good, but that one stank. Ranking Rick Riordan.
I'm used to you singing Prison
I know.
at the end. This is the OG.
All right.
I've just been I've been staring at this best hero list throughout like the whole day. Just like,
all right, I'm going to read it. Let me read it. All right. Best hero from 10th best to number 1 best. Alex, Leo, Sam, Annabeth, Meg, Piper, Sadie, Percy, Nico, Lester. So the question is, do we want to add Grover? Do we want to move Percy or Annabeth?
Okay, we don't want to add Grover.
No.
But it seems ridiculous that Annabeth is this low.
My argument for it is that I think she's had not that much of an arc. I really like her as a character, but...
It's true.
I'd be perfectly okay putting her over Meg. This is the problem with Meg.
Well, but Meg
Yeah.
Damn. All right.
Meg.
The problem with Meg is that she really does have an arc and she does grow a lot, but I still had so much of a period where I didn't like her that it's hard for me to put her above Annabeth.
And Annabeth consistently is a hero. I don't know.
Yeah.
And this is frankly actually my problem. God, I have so much recency bias.
Where you want to put Percy higher?
Of course I do.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Because again,
I mean, like at least above Nico.
yeah,
Yeah.
like again, it's like Nico is a hero in the face of like morbid circumstances and past trauma. Percy is a hero because of his inherent like heart and like.
I'm totally
love
fine with
for
Percy
people.
being number 2. I also will say, like, Annabeth is already above Leo, who I think has way more going on than Annabeth ever does. But not to say that I'm
Leo
saying...
also has a lot that, like, I really still don't like about him,
Fair.
unlike Annabeth.
Yeah.
So I think he definitely stays where he is.
I think all we should do is shank Percy and Nico.
I think we should move Annabeth above Meg. But
I'm okay with that, too.
maybe we hold off and see what other
Let's see
books
what
bring.
comes.
Yeah.
I think so. But for now, let's switch Percy and Nico, because I feel like I was probably a big advocate of that. And I obviously love Nico, but like Percy's really special. And this is bad of me, but like, is Lester one? I still think so.
Lester is definitely one.
Clara,
Even
you're turning
though
your back
he's in
on.
the worst book in the whole world.
This is what happened to me with Lightning Thief, right? This is exactly the thing. Is I'm like, wow, Percy Jackson though, huh? Like that's my problem. Is when I'm reintroduced to just Percy, I'm like, there's a reason he's the star of the show.
There's
a
core beauty to him.
Yeah.
No, Lester has growth. Lester is a true hero.
Lester is the bester.
Wow.
Best
Lester's
god.
the bester.
Starting at number 10, Thor, Persephone, Bast, Mr. D, Hermes, Set, Juno, Hades, Apollo, and Bess. Nominees: Hebe, Ganymede, Iris, Garrus, and Ellison. The only person I would consider on this is Garrus, probably.
Yeah.
And even then, it's just because he symbolizes old age and we love Percy. I don't think it's because Garrus is so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
he's not a character.
Yeah, it's more his like the principle of him than what he really does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's how Percy acts on him, what he represents, and like I guess to a degree like his motivations. But even then it's like it being so short, it just being one scene, I have a hard time putting him in the top 10 of best gods in all of the Riordanverse.
I would have considered him over Thor, but I keep coming back to Thor's the only Norse god we have on the list, so I'd like to leave him in there.
Yeah.
And again, even if I know we've cut other people off this list that could take Thor's place, and Garrus isn't better than them.
The other thing is, I don't like Zeus, but Zeus is well written.
No, look at what I've done to the list. Scroll down. Scroll down.
Yeah.
What did you do, Zeus? As a nominee.
For
baddie.
Well, that actually brings me to my other point I wanted to make about Best God is, should we have put Loki in Best God? Or are we just making Best God?
We made this decision. We made this decision back, I think, in the Kane Chronicles era.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's why I think Zeus is not here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why Set's in both, because sometimes he's good and sometimes he's bad.
But he had more... Sorry, go ahead, Clara.
No. Because we had talked about him and then we're like, okay, you can go in both. And then once we got to the Magnus Chase stuff, we needed Loki to be on the best baddie.
Yeah.
And then, so now I think it's that if a god is bad, they're in the baddie list. And if a god is good, they can be in best god. And if they're good and bad, they could be in both.
If they
but like Zeus is only ever bad.
Yeah. If they exemplify like the two sides of true godliness, then they can be in both. But typically, if they only really embody one or the other, then they are limited to one list. And Zeus only embodies problems exclusively.
Yeah.
I'm very torn about Zeus. So I agree with you. He's not on best god. You won me over on that. Him on best baddie, I'm just like, yes, but also like I do think best baddie has a meaning to it that goes beyond what Zeus is, which is consistently the worst. But like he's not
antagonism. He's not a direct antagonist in the same way as these guys are. So maybe we should read our current.
So our current list, starting at 10, is Octavian, Mr. Alderman, Set, Caligula, Orion, Loki, Luke, Setne, Commodus, and Nero. And then the other question is, worst god, Zeus.
Clara made a new list titled Worst God. Zeus is number 1.
All right, I'll give you that one. I'll definitely give you that one. I that makes me want to, maybe next podcast, I'll come in with some nominees for other worst gods. He's obviously number 1, but we could probably come up with the top 10. Now, so that leaves the other question of like, Hebe, Garrus, and Ellison are like baddies of this book, but none of them are like villains.
Baddies.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Luckily, I also don't think that they're nowhere near Octavian.
Yeah.
So
that's the answer.
The thing is that, again, this book isn't huge stakes. So it makes it hard to put anyone on a best list. The only thing we really did is move Percy up because it was a reminder of like why he's already been as good a hero as he is and deserving of a top high placement. But no one else is like enough of a villain, enough of an antagonist to really make a impact over like so many books.
And I'd even argue that like if we included someone like Hebe or something, that really opens up the door for like, well, Juno messed them up a lot, and like, you know, a lot of the Olympians messed with their lives a bunch. So
that's just the nature of the series. Like they are obstacles. We could have another list of best worst obstacles.
Best obstacles. Book ranking time, starting at the bottom. Hidden Oracle, Sea of Monsters, Tyrant's Tomb, Red Pyramid, Sword of Summer, Lost Hero, Son of Neptune, Serpent's Shadow, Hammer of Thor, Blood of Olympus, Battle of the Labyrinth, Titan's Curse. And now, the top 10. Lightning Thief, Sun and Star, Throne of Fire, Burning Maze, The Ship of the Dead, Tower of Nero, Mark of Athena, Last Olympian, Dark Prophecy, House of Hades. And where does the Chalice of the Gods go? First off, I think my first question is, does it get in the top 10?
I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't think so either.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
My inclination would actually be to put it above Titan's Curse, because I think Titan's Curse similarly has this really poignant ending, and it has a lot of great stuff leading up to it. But like it's not as impactful as some of these other books that we have in the top 10.
I had some zany ideas, guys.
I'm going to say my not zany idea first. I similarly agree with Clara about like the stakes and what takes place here. Just it doesn't punch as hard. The highs aren't as high as they are elsewhere, even though the lows don't necessarily go as low as some of these other books in terms of like narrative problems. I would probably put it around Battle of the Labyrinth, like either above or below.
So to be clear, right now, Battle of the Labyrinth is directly above Titan's Curse. So the Titan's Curse is 11 and Battle of the Labyrinth is 12.
Yeah.
So
I might put this, again, I really like Battle of the Labyrinth. It to me is more influential on my brain. Like it sticks into my brain more than I feel like Chalice of the Gods will.
Yeah.
So I feel like I would put Chalice of the Gods at 13 instead of Blood of Olympus.
But so it still gets a better placement than Blood of Olympus.
Yeah. All right, Crazy Dan.
I mean, I kind of thought about putting it over Tower of Nero.
The hell?
So I would have made it top 5.
Sarah is speechless. Her eyebrows shot up into her hairline.
You're telling me I let you move Tower of Nero down that far, but you will never, never tell me that this is better than Tower of Nero.
So my second thought was
Try again.
I put it instead of Lightning Thief as number 10.
It's not
It's not as iconic as Lightning Thief.
Yeah.
You're coming for my two, Dan.
But Lightning Thief, like,
what?
it's such a kid's book.
This is a kid's series.
That's true.
The rest of this
But
series
this book,
wouldn't
like,
exist
means
without
something.
Lightning
Wouldn't
Thief.
have Chalice of the Gods be as meaningful without its parallels to Lightning Thief.
Yeah.
Right.
That's like kind of the point
That's why
of one of the set pieces.
That's why I'm saying put it right below Lightning Thief.
I'd be down for that.
Well,
I would even, because I don't really remember Sun and Star that much,
Yeah.
and I don't know how much of that's just my memory.
yeah.
Maybe that was recency bias.
Mm.
So then we move Sun and Star to 11, and then
I don't think we should move Sun and Star lower.
Sun and the Star.
Okay.
There's too
had
many
a
good
lot of
things about it.
There were a lot of fantastic things about it. My brain.
I think I agree to put it between Battle and Titan's Curse.
You don't want to put it above Titan's Curse?
Well, I thought that was a good compromise with Olga, but if you want,
I mean, I'd be willing to. I really enjoyed this. I really appreciated it as much as I like Battle of the Labyrinth and Titan's Curse. I like, again, they are the latter parts of that series. They are wonderful, wonderful parts of that puzzle and that whole. But like, again, this is a return. This is a renewal, and I really enjoyed it. Eventually, just like we're reevaluating Annabeth potentially, like I think I might want to reevaluate Chalice, but I'm happy to put it just outside of the top 10.
All right, number 11, Chalice of the Gods. I think that makes sense. It's so interesting because when we started this podcast, without a doubt, 100%, I would have said Titan's Curse and Battle of the Labyrinth are better than Lightning Thief. But I think you've definitely won me over on this, where it's like Lightning Thief, like as a kid or a younger person, I enjoyed the set pieces and like how things developed in those two books a lot more. But the iconicness of Lightning Thief is just so intensely pure that it's hard to beat.
Yeah.
And I think importantly, this isn't our favorite list.
Yeah.
Like, I think our favorite lists would look different. Battle of the Labyrinth would be close to the top for me. I sort of never want to read House of Hades again.
Yeah.
Like, that's not entirely true, but it's almost true.
Yeah.
Like, and so that's why also I think Lightning Thief is so high up.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, we put it at number 11. I'm not going to reread everything. It's directly above Titan's Curse and below Lightning Thief.
So our top 10 has not changed.
Yeah.
This is, again, a book that doesn't necessarily stand on its own feet. This is like a legacy book. And that's why I have a harder time putting it amongst some of the most like, whoa.
I'm kind of
moment-having books.
I'm tempted. We probably won't do this, but I'm tempted to have us reread Demigods and Magicians, those as one story, and decide whether this is the best short story or if that is.
I mean, I really like Demigods and Magicians, but
me too.
It's a tough one because that also is just like so fan servicey that it's like you gotta love it.
Yeah.
I want
it's so good
crossover so bad.
Yeah, me too.
We'll get it.
When's the big crossover coming?
I have no idea. If he's writing 2 more of these. Yeah.
And then when's his Irish mythology one coming? That's the thing. I'm excited for more of these books.
Yeah.
Especially after reading this, but like I'm really bummed because I want the Irish mythology one.
Yeah, I want the Irish mythology. I want Daughter of the Deep too. I would like crossover thing, Magnus or Kane Chronicles.
I really want him to do what he did with Mark Oshiro
with other
and
people.
Sun in the Star with other people, especially Piper.
Yeah.
I want that. That's probably my number one like fan service ask.
Yeah.
Is giving Piper more.
But at least having read this book, I'm not like, angry that he's going to do 2 more. I'm
No.
like, okay, I'm looking forward to those. I just wish he focuses energy in a slightly different direction, but he's in Percy mode right now, and I understand that. Thank you so much for listening, and may the gods be ever in your favor.
Bye-bye.
Bye.